All right, well, good morning, everyone. My name is Keith Erfmeyer. I am the assessor for the city and county of Denver. Just want to welcome everyone here today. Thank you for attending. We believe this is an important announcement for all property owners in Colorado, and we really thank you for participating in this with us. Every 2 years, assessors in Colorado, in every county, revalue the real property within their counties according to state statutes. We follow statutory guidelines, procedures outlined by the Division of Property Taxation, and uniforms appraisal standards to determine a value for each and every property. It is critical to know that for this 2023 revaluation, the actual value must reflect the property values as of June 30, 2022. Notices must be mailed by us no later than May 1, next Monday, informing each property owner of this valuation. Today, my colleagues from Adams, Arapahoe, Boulder, Broomfield, Douglas, Elbert, Larimer, and Jefferson counties are here with me today to announce the results of this 2023 revaluation process. Joanne Groff, the property tax administrator for the state of Colorado, is also here with us today to speak about the state perspective on this particular process. I'm going to speak to Denver's assessments, and then I'll turn it over to each of my colleagues to briefly talk to you about theirs. Denver's assessment division revalued nearly 240,000 properties citywide, and I thank my Denver colleagues for their excellent work in this process. However great a job we did, we also know that we don't know these properties as well as the people who live and work in them every day. And so with that in mind, we do ask property owners to take a good look at the notices they receive. And if they do have concerns about the property value, to please let us know during the appeal period, which I'll get to in just a few moments. During this assessment, we reviewed and analyzed right around 40,000 transactions of real property in Denver. The median value increase for single unit residential properties, which are houses, townhomes, condos, is 33% in Denver over this 2-year cycle. Multifamily residential property, particularly 2 to 4 units, reflects similar results with a median increase of about 45%. Property values demonstrated steadily strong increases throughout the study period that I mentioned, ending on June 30, 2022. The median value increase for Denver's commercial properties is 17%. These increases in commercial value are similarly reflected in each of the major subclasses, including offices, retail, warehouses, and lodging, while downtown office properties have remained largely unchanged. These values represent changes in property values from July 1 of 2020 to June 30 of 2022, a 2-year period. Any changes that may have occurred beginning in July of last year are not reflected in our valuations or what we do at this point in time. If a property owner does not agree with the value or classification, they can appeal to the county assessor as long as the appeal is postmarked or received if filed electronically by the assessor no later than June 8 of this year, 2023. When a property owner receives a notice of valuation, there will be instructions along with the notice explaining how to submit a protest either in writing, in person, or online. Denver property owners can expect their valuation notices to be mailed to them this week and early next. Thank you. I'd now like to turn it over to Toby Damisch from Douglas County.
Thank you, Keith, and thank you all for coming today to help us spread the message of this reappraisal. In Douglas County, we experienced unprecedented growth in property values for this 2-year period. I've been doing this work since late 1990s, as several other people in the room have also been doing. When was the last time we had growth like this? But this is even greater than that. In Douglas County, we are seeing changes to our land values in the 20 to 40% range. Our commercial property is increasing about 20%, but industrial property is increasing over 30%. The real headline for this reappraisal, however, is in residential. And for Douglas County, our residential properties are increasing between 30 and 60% with a median of 47. The fact is that there is no reprieve for homeowners this year. From corner to corner of Douglas County, in fact, probably the state, all values have gone up quite significantly. If it's rural, if it's suburban, if it's large, if it's small, if it's inexpensive or it's expensive, all properties in Douglas County in the residential class are going up very much. To Douglas County citizens, I want to say to review your notice of value. As Keith mentioned, it will be mailed on May 1, and so you'll be receiving it May 3rd, 4th, or 5th. And I ask you to ask this question of yourself when you receive that value and you review it. Ask if you would be able to sell your property for that amount last summer. The appraisal date for this reappraisal is June of 2022. That's really important because some markets had some softening since then. If you decide that that value is a number that you could never sell your house for, then file your appeal. In Douglas County, we send out postcards to most of our property owners for notices of value, and they can simply sign that postcard and return it to our office in the mail. Next, I'm going to turn this over to Scott Kiersgaard, Jefferson County Assessor. Scott.
Good morning. I would reiterate what Keith and Toby said about the appeal process and the valuation process. We also sent the postcard. One thing I would add to that, though, is we don't look at the market and go, okay, values are up 30% and add that to every house. We look at the value of every property. And so that's a little different. You see the increase and you're shocked by it sometimes. But if you look at the actual number, like Toby said, would you have sold your house for that? Would you have been able to get that? That's really the question to ask, because some people's houses are up a lot. And it's very neighborhood specific. It's one thing for me to stand here and say Lakewood is up 37 or 38%, but within Lakewood, different neighborhoods, different property types are up different amounts. In Ken Carroll, which is in suburban Jeffco, unincorporated, we have identified 11 different neighborhoods that come under the umbrella of Ken Carroll, about 4,000 units. And values went up from the mid-20s to the mid-40s in these different neighborhoods. And that's true, I think, throughout all of our counties. It's very neighborhood specific and very property type specific. Commercial properties in Jeffco up around 20%, apartments up around 20% for the most part. Hotels and restaurants were up a little bit more, but they took a big hit 2 years ago because of COVID. So their values were reduced 10, 20, 30%, and now they're up from that lower value. Vacant land in Jeffco was up a lot, 50%. And one thing about that is Jeffco is pretty developed, at least the flatter parts of the county. And there aren't a lot of big tracts left to be developed. And that drives up the prices. That's all I've got. Next up, Tom Swingle from Adams County. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Good morning. Adams County experienced significant increases in values reflecting the strong conditions across the Denver metro area, like all these other metro counties. The Adams County reappraisal for 2023 included 200,000 accounts, showing an increase of 38% on our residential properties, 42% increase on our commercial and industrial properties, and 15% increase on our vacant land. The assessor's office encourages property owners to review their accounts online and make sure that their properties are listed correctly. If you'd like to appeal your valuation, you can do so in person or by mail at Adams County, or online. Adams County, you can do it online, are also available at the assessor's website. That's it. I'd like to introduce Cynthia Braddock from Boulder County.
Thanks, Tom. Again, I'm Cynthia Braddock from Boulder County, County Assessor. And good morning, and thank you all for coming out on this wet day. The reappraisal, as we all know, setting values and getting NOVs in the mail takes a lot of work. So I'd like to take this opportunity to give thanks, share my appreciation and respect for all the staff who've been involved in this hard work and their dedication to getting it done, and also their willingness to work with property owners as they get their notice of valuation to review their values. Boulder County continues to be a desirable place to live and work. The latest property values recognize the desirability of the county and the strength of the real estate market during this reappraisal period. Commercial properties recovering from the COVID pandemic have a median value increase of 41%. Most of the increase is in the warehouse and hotel motel property types. Offices have been the slowest to recover. Apartments have a median value of 44%. Residential values experienced significant increases, reflecting the strong economic conditions and housing decisions made during the COVID pandemic. The residential median value increase for Boulder County is 35%. Unincorporated, if you look at the median value increase across the cities and towns of the county, the unincorporated plains and the cities and towns in the lower southeast corner of the county experience the highest increases in value. These would be the towns of Erie, Lafayette, Louisville, and Superior. Our communities continue to recover from the Marshall Fire. Reviewing properties destroyed by the fire on January 1st of 2023, which is when it's the assessment date. It's when we review properties to establish classification, condition, and use. The properties destroyed in the fire have been remediated and are now buildable, and they're coming back to 100% land value, though assessed at the residential rate, which is a lower assessment rate. I live in Louisville, and it's been my joy every day to see the rebuilding of homes. 2 homes were done and received their certification of occupancy on January 1 of 2023. The rest of the homes may be partially built and will have a partial built value. Many homes, we encourage property owners to review their NOV and use information and tools available on our website to understand their value. We also are available via email at assessor@bouldercounty.org or at our phone, just please give us a phone call at our phone number at 303-441-3530. And now I'd like to introduce the Larimer County Assessor, Bob Overbeck.
Thank you, Assessor Braddock. Larimer County Assessor Bob Overbeck. The low mortgage rates we saw the last few years, coupled with a strong economy, saw Larimer County's property values increase significantly. Throughout the county, we are seeing a 40% increase overall. If you look at some of the towns in Larimer County, we're seeing Fort Collins up 40%, Loveland is up 37%, and if you go to the rural parts of Larimer County, such as Red Feather, you can see increases as high as 63% in the county. We encourage people to contact the assessor's office if they have any questions on our notice of value or if their property characteristics are incorrect. We have more information on the assessor's website at larimerassessor.org. Thank you very much. And now let me present Broomfield County Assessor Jay Yamashita.
Good morning. My name is Jay Yamashita. I am the City and County of Broomfield Assessor. I would like to thank each of you for attending this press event. I would also like to thank my staff, who I couldn't have done this without them. Like the other areas in Metro Denver, the City and County of Broomfield also experienced significant increases in value due to a strong real estate market. The Assessor Department valued over 27,000 real property accounts. The median valuation increase for Broomfield for single-family residential properties is 41%, condominiums are at 30%, and multifamily properties are at 29%. The median valuation increase for commercial properties in Broomfield is 20% and includes office, retail, warehouse, and industrial. The values represent sales and statistical analysis from July 1st, 2020 through June 30 of 2022. Any sales after June 30 of 2022 cannot be considered until the next reappraisal cycle. The Assessor's Office encouraged property owners to review their accounts and make sure their inventory is listed correctly. If a property owner feels their valuation is incorrect, they can appeal to the county assessor as long as the appeal is postmarked or received by the assessor no later than June 8th of 2023. When a property owner receives a notice of valuation, there will be instructions along with the notice explaining how to submit an appeal, either in writing, in person, or via email. You can find this contact information on our website at broomfield.org/assessor. Thank you. I'd like now to turn it over to Susan Murphy from Albert County. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Susan Murphy, Albert County Assessor. Thank you, Dave, for the introduction. And I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to Keith, Josh, Denver staff for putting this together, printing our maps, collecting the data, and then providing this platform for us so that we can present our 2023 reappraisal information to the public. Elbert County is a little bit different than most of the metropolitan districts in that our population is around 26,000. My parcel count is nearing 19,000. We're moving up with all the split parcels and the vacant land turning into subdivisions. 90% of our value comes from the classification of residential value, so we have very little commercial. But we do have a McDonald's and a Taco Bell now. We're growing, right? The high school kids are happy in Elizabeth. So we may have 5 stoplights in our county. The western portion of our county, which neighbors, we've got Denver, Douglas County, Arapahoe, El Paso County, has become more urbanized. And while our eastern portion of the county, you can see on the map, is very rural for our farming and ranching communities, which they are very happy to see the moisture today because those blades of grass are coming up. So it's very good. In Colorado, one thing I do have in common with my fellow assessors that are here with me today in all 64 counties is we are very passionate about what we do. We're very passionate about fair and equitable values. We're very passionate about having a courteous and knowledgeable staff. And I'm so thankful for my staff as well as all of you. They work so hard to ensure that we are following all of these Colorado legislation changes. Whether you're a big county or a small county, we all have to follow the same guidance provided by the DPT and Colorado legislation. So they're all working very hard at your assessment offices. I have lived and worked in Elbert County for 25 years. We have expansive, majestic, panoramic views of the Front Range and Pikes Peak. We are a rural farm community that offers open space, room to breathe, and an easy commute using Highway 24, Highway 86, and Interstate I-70. On my way to work, it's very common that I see antelope, mule deer, wild turkeys. Sometimes I have to stop for elk, and then the domestic livestock that we see every single day. We're very different. Our median sales price as of the appraisal date, June 30th, 2022, is $675,000. I think at one time, Toby, we were higher than you. Yeah, higher than Douglas County. So as Keith said, that wave is heading over into Elbert County. That is an increased sales price of $175,000 from 2021, which indicates a median overall change of 35%. The northwestern portion of our county, on the outskirts of Parker and then closest to the Denver metro area, will see increases median of 40 to 45%. Moving south and bordering Douglas County and then moving east into the town of Elizabeth, we'll see a median increase of 35%. Town of Kiowa, including unincorporated Elbert, increased around 30%, and then our most eastern portion of our county, which is our farm and ranch community, will see an increase closer to 25%. Our vacant land increased 35% median, and commercial 30% median increase. So my communication today for probably all property owners in the state, and especially for us in Elbert County, we really encourage property owners to get in touch with your assessor's office. There's too many changes in 2023, too many changes in legislation. We have significant valuation growth. And so your best communication and your best answers are going to come directly from your assessment offices. Elbert County has a very robust website where you can go online, and it's very interactive, it's user-friendly for appeals, sales information, property record cards. But please come in, please talk to us. This is our time during the month of May and now the beginning of June for an entire week that we get to shine because we know what we're doing. Don't turn to social media and people that don't understand what is actually happening this year. So please speak directly to your assessor's office. We have courteous and knowledgeable staff, and we are more than willing to communicate and learn about your property from you. Thank you. I'll turn it over to my neighboring Arapahoe County Assessor PK Kaiser.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Keith, and your team for putting this wonderful show together. Good morning and welcome. Thanks for attending. I'm PK Kaiser, Arapahoe County Assessor. Like every county in metro area, we have observed a significant increase. We send a notice of value to almost 218,000 property owners, and that doesn't include the business accounts and the tax-exempt accounts. Those are all taxable accounts, and in last 2 years in base period, we recorded almost 33,000 sales in Arapahoe County. We observe almost 42% in residential. The biggest contributor in the residential sides are the lower tier price tags and the new construction. We recorded almost 2,500 new construction parcels inside the Arapahoe County. The commercial side is about 22%, and the big contributor to the commercial sides are the warehouse, industrial property, the commercial condos, and addition of airport properties into the tax roll. In Arapahoe County, we have one unique feature that we put a QR code on every single notice of value. Simply scan the code. It will take you to the property where you can see your detailed notice of value, and you will also see an appeal form online. You can simply appeal your property value online. In addition to online appeal, which was very appreciated in last year and this year as well, we are hoping, we have set up 3 remote offices inside Arapahoe County. We will be setting up 2 remote offices for the senior communities, and we are setting up a remote office in the far eastern part where the people who live remotely have challenged to reach the assessor's office. They can come there and file their appeal, or they can ask questions. We are also offering a video conference. We are also offering audio conference. And also in Arapahoe County, we have installed drop boxes in front of almost every major county building. If you're not comfortable coming into office, you don't like go online, just drop your appeal in the box and we will receive by the end of the day. Other than that, in Arapahoe County, we are adding one more feature in coming days, and that's the property alert. If you create your account around your property, and if anything, any changes happen to title or something, you will get the alert. Other than that, we are in line with the rest of the metro counties, and now you will hear from the best and the top, Joan Juroff, State Property Tax Administration. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thank you, PK. There's nothing better than being able to back cleanup, because you've heard from the knowledge base, and now I can just go ahead and consolidate some of that information for you. You've heard pretty consistently about the increases in property values, most specifically the increases in residential values from a median standpoint. Let me tell you that when you get your notice of value, your value may not fall within that median category, because you've heard that different neighborhoods have different values. So don't be mad at the people at this table if when you get your notice of value, your house has gone up 70%. It's because houses have sold in your neighborhood. And that's what they use, because all of the assessment for all of the values for residential properties have to happen on market. That's why you've heard how many sales have happened the assessor needs to translate that market value of the sold properties into a relationship with the unsold properties. So maybe your unsold property didn't have quite the improvements that the sold property did next door. That's your opportunity to talk to your assessor and get the value right. And your assessors don't want to maximize your value. They want to get your value correct. So please do that outreach to them. And if you have any questions, do the outreach to them. But I want to caution everyone a little bit. Again, your assessor has to do market value. You're getting a notice of value that has a lot of information on it. Your notice of value is going to tell you what was your value last time, what is your value this time. You'll be able to calculate the percentage of growth on that. They're also going to tell you what your assessed value will probably be, and they're going to tell you an estimate of what tax you're going to be paying. I can pretty well guarantee that those two component pieces, your assessed value and the estimate of tax, will be wrong. Let me say that again. I can pretty well guarantee you, so don't hold me to it if it doesn't happen, pretty well guarantee you that the assessed value that's on your notice of value and the probable tax on your property will be wrong. Now, why do I say that? Well, it's because your legislature isn't immune to what's going on right now. There have been lots of discussions about providing some additional property value adjustment and assessment rate adjustment prior to taxes going out in the fall, taxes being set. So those two component pieces are controlled by the legislature, and they're talking about it. Now, somebody is going to tell me there's only 10 days left in the legislative session. That's true. But there are lots of opportunities between now and December that the legislature can avail themselves of. I truly expect to see some adjustments and some relief in 2023. So what do you get to do with your assessor's office? You can't protest your assessed value, and you cannot protest your taxes. But what you can do is discuss your value, and you can discuss your classification to make sure those are correct, because all of the rest of your ultimate obligation on property taxes started with those two component pieces. So focus on those and get them done. Now, we talked about what the assessors get to do, and that's your actual value. We talked about what the legislature gets to do, and that's the assessment rate and any value adjustments. But finally, the state does not collect any property tax. The state legislature doesn't have anything to do, ultimately, with your property tax. They have a lot to do with the component pieces that go into determining your property tax, but the tax itself is at the local level. And so your taxing jurisdictions are going to be faced with what do they need to do to make sure their budgets are whole and to make sure that they're not overtaxing you. And I would advise you to watch. Every one of your taxing jurisdictions is going to have conversations about setting their mill levies, and watch that. That mill levy is set in December traditionally. They'll have hearings in the summer and in the fall to talk about where are they going to go with all of this value increase that they're going to be facing. Where are they going to go with your mill levies? But the mill levy and the actual tax is not under the control of your legislature, and it's not under control of the assessor's offices. So you can complain about that, but they're not going to be able to help you with that. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Can I list off, I guess I have a host of technical questions. Can Colorado property owners look right now on county assessors' pages and see what the increased values are, or is that going to happen later this week, or has that been updated?
May 1st for Larimer County.
Okay.
May 1st for
I think some might already be on, and others probably no later than May 1st. So we try and coincide that activity with the notices going out so that there's a little bit of a connection there. So I would say by the middle of next week at the latest, not just the counties that you see represented here, but all counties in Colorado will have that information online.
By May 1st.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I know the legislature keeps changing what the assessment rates are and how much actual value is assessed. But can you just go over what the 2023 tax year, 24 tax year assessment rates, and I know that gets complicated, but
It does. I'll turn that over to Joanne just in case there's any follow-up.
So, as we sit today, the legislature passed legislation last year, and if you want more than what I'm giving, I can give you more. Let me focus on residential first. There will be a $15,000 adjustment off of actual value before the application of the assessment rate, and then there will be an assessment rate right now of 6.765. I always try and transpose those two numbers, 6.765. I believe that the legislature and the governor are looking very closely at making further adjustments in those two pieces. But that's what it would be today with no further action. In 2024, under current statute, the 15,000 adjustment goes away, and the assessment rate for residential, single-family homes, traditional residential properties, isn't fixed. They will fix that based on a formula, and they'll be doing that early next year. That's how it is today. Most of the rumors I've heard is that's changing, more than likely between now and December, when mill levies need to be set by the taxing jurisdictions. Does that help?
yes.
Okay.
And maybe I'll bookend this a little bit more. You've heard from 9 counties here, I believe. We talked to our counterparts around the rest of the state. So there are 64 counties in Colorado, 55 others that aren't represented here. I think in the press release, you'll see very similar experiences in terms of increases around the state, 20%, 40%, 60% around the state. I've been in this business for nearly 30 years now. I've never seen this happen around the state as it has happened this year, where values in the past might have gone up in certain pockets around Colorado, certain communities around Colorado. Certainly the Front Range has had a decade of experience of rapid growth, but we've never seen, I think we would all agree, something this historic or unprecedented. That's part of the message that we wanted to get out to people, and it's likely why the legislature has taken a significant notice, as Joanne mentioned. So just wanted to bring in the rest of the state perspective into this conversation as well. Any other questions that we could help with? Yes, ma'am.
Looking at some of the different pockets for within the Denver area, the Park Hill neighborhoods said they increased around 40%. Does this just speak to the growing gentrification though in some of these neighborhoods, forcing out people who have always lived in these places if they can't afford to pay these increasing property taxes now?
I'm not sure as the reasons why. There could be many reasons why people decide to sell their homes and decide to purchase a home in Park Hill or anywhere else in Denver or the metro area for that matter. So there's likely a number of reasons behind why people make decisions on where they live and what to purchase or sell their property for. 40% is certainly a significant increase. I think it's commensurate with what you've seen throughout the metro area. I think we all compare quite similarly to each other. So I'm not sure I want to grab certain neighborhoods and make any assumptions about them just based on the numbers that we're seeing. I think Scott mentioned it. You know, we're talking about medians here. Medians mean that half of the experiences will be above that and half will be below that. And neighborhoods vary throughout Denver, throughout the metro area. So everybody's notice that they get will have a different experience for them. So from our perspective, it's hard to make an assumption such as that.
It just feels like some people might see these property values as such a good thing, right? Because then they can benefit off of that. But then for others, it could be very suffocating.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, there's a bit of good news in this, and that, you know, property values, people's assets, what they own has gone up in value. I think Joanne's mentioned a little bit about what the legislature is attempting to do to try and relieve some of that. They're very, very aware of what we're discussing here. And at least in Denver, I know there's some relief packages available for people that maybe can't afford the increases, can't afford the taxes, and there are even statewide programs that can help seniors, disabled veterans, and even, I think last year there was a bill that if somebody's property taxes go up more than 4%, they can defer property taxes up to a pretty significant amount in order to stay where they are. Yes, sir. I saw his hand first. Sorry.
I guess along those lines, can you talk about what you got? I know that the deferral programs are run now through the state treasurer's office, but what are county assessors doing to make sure people know about them? Because we often get notes from readers when we write about them that they had no idea they were an option. And I guess also tied to that, I'm guessing hearing from you guys that you're pretty nervous maybe about getting some angry phone calls from folks. And maybe someone could speak a little more to that message. Obviously, you guys, you don't determine how you set what values are, but it's not your fault that property taxes are going up.
So I'll save the second part for Toby. He might be, I'll just to get a different voice up here. But I think in terms of messaging, we try to include sometimes half sheets, our websites direct people for seniors and veterans and other types of relief that's statutory. The treasurers in our counties often send with the tax bill themselves programs that are in existence that can help with them. So we try to get the word out as best we can. I think something that maybe keeps us awake at night more than a lot of work to do is that we're not getting to people that need that type of relief, or a property value might be excessive, but they don't take the time to tell us about it. I think that bothers us probably more than in a volume of work type of thing. So I think we're trying to get that out as best we can. It's sometimes that can be a little bit of a struggle in terms of its being received. But I'll let Toby answer about the angry taxpayer.
Thank you.
I'm a taxpayer and Toby's
He is a taxpayer in my district. I want to add to that. I think it's it's probably the most important thing we do, along with the appraisals, is our communication. And so everyone up here loses sleep about this issue pretty regularly because it's really hard to get this information to the public. And it's getting extremely complicated. I can't believe we've gotten this far without saying the word Gallagher in this room, but Gallagher was repealed in, I think, 2020, that Gallagher was repealed. And since then, there's just been a barrage of property tax legislation that is slowly making this tax policy even more complicated. So when it comes to the senior exemption, the disabled veteran exemption, the Gold Star spouse exemption, the income tax credit, all of us up here have a mission to get that information on our website and find any way we can, any channel we can to inform our citizens of it. And this is one of the many things we're all doing this year. In Douglas County, we're having a town hall tonight from 6 to 8 p.m. And county commissioners will be present. That'll be live and in person. And so that's one example of a tool that we'll use to try and reach our citizenry about this. In terms of angry taxpayers, I feel like we probably all advise our staff to do the same thing, and that is treat our citizens with kid gloves and be very graceful and understanding of their situation or situations. That's really easy for us to do because we are all homeowners in our own districts, and so we are experiencing the very same thing that everyone else is. Our staff have gotten very good over the years of learning from our citizens where they hurt financially and where property taxes are a problem. And so we're as helpful as we can be in guiding them to the tools that they can use, whether that's filing an appeal to see if there's something that we can do about our value, or helping them apply for a senior exemption, and so on. Yes, sir.
This actually might be a good question for you, but anyone else can step in as well. Especially in affluent suburban neighborhoods, we often hear pushback from residents who have concerns about new property developments popping up near them. They have concerns about their property values decreasing as a result. But then kind of on the other hand, people obviously don't want the property values too high in a tax sense. And so I know you guys don't control zoning and that kind of thing. You don't set property tax rates themselves, but just in your opinion as public officials, is there a way to kind of balance those two desires? Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I might punt on that question to one of the others and see if they have an opinions. Growth has always been, in Douglas County, one of the hottest topics. And it's interesting how that works. We've got people who have been moving in, thousands of people moving in every year, really, for a few decades. And it's interesting, once they get here, myself included, we don't like the growth as much. So that's a pretty predictable human behavior. The growth sort of begets growth from a value point of view. That's what we've seen in Douglas County. Like, this growth has actually increased growth from a value perspective. It's kind of an interesting dynamic. I don't know if any of the assessors have something to say about this question.
I guess I'll try. I think it's been widely publicized or put out there, just kind of a shortage of housing in general in the entire state of Colorado. I don't think you could disconnect what we're talking about today with, that particular fact. It's one of many, many things, certainly, that contribute to property values, value growth, things like that. I'm not sure the assessors would have a strong, suggestion or opinion or strategy on what to do about that. I think we try and perfect our craft, which is to get accurate values and, administrate the property tax process. I think we would leave it up to others to direct strategies in terms of, more housing units, things like that around the state. So I think we would probably stick with what we know best and maybe not venture into that territory too much. Do you want to add anything, Joan?
Not on that question. That isn't within my bailiwick. I did want to mention, from a standpoint of the brochures, we have brochures on all of the tax issues, all the tax relief opportunities on our website. I'm going to banner that. I'm going to go back to the office and see if we can't banner that. But at the Division of Property Taxation website, we have brochures that explain every property tax relief opportunity there is for seniors, for people of low income, for senior exemption, for all of the exemptions that exist, or property tax relief. So I'm going to direct you there. And of course, you're going to ask me what that website is, and it's not coming to my brain, but if you Google Division of Property Taxation, State of Colorado, you'll get there. Again, I want to remind you all that we've mentioned it very briefly, and it was under my notes to mention, and I failed to. We have great information that's being collected right now on this topic by the Colorado Assessors Association. So it is not government, it is an association that the assessors belong to. They sent out a Survey Monkey to ask these very questions. Most of the counties have provided information to the Colorado Assessors Association. There are about 12, 13 that haven't yet, so we're hoping that they get all of that information, and they have very graciously then shared it with us so that we can share it more broadly with everybody, anybody that wants to know. In that effort, you've heard a lot about the metro area. I want you to all sit back and be grateful, if you own a property, that you're not owning that property, unless you do, in the recreational rural areas, because the recreational rural areas of the state of Colorado have bounced back from COVID big time. And their median increases are dramatically more than what you've heard today. Some of them are as high as 70%. And again, that's a median income. But even in what I consider are truly rural, are real rural areas, they are experiencing increases. And one of the reasons for that is that although people are just concerned with what's going to happen with their property tax, we still have one of the lowest obligations of property tax of any states. Now, we're not the lowest, but we still have a pretty low obligation on property tax. So although people are going, oh my gosh, my increase, New York, New Jersey, a lot of other states, especially eastern coast states that have property tax, are way higher. These folks moved to the state of Colorado and they're shocked. I will give an anecdotal story. Not very long ago, I had someone call me. She was so concerned about the property tax increase that she was going to pay in Colorado. She wanted to move here, but she just didn't think that she could afford it based on what her property taxes were in Chicago. So I talked it through with her, and then I said, you are aware this is the annual obligation for property tax, correct? No, she was thinking it was the monthly obligation for property tax. So compared to where she was coming from, she was thinking it was the monthly property tax obligation. So this is going to be startling to people. We are an actual value state. Every 2 years we go through this exercise, but it isn't a crisis. There are people that care. Those taxing jurisdictions are going to be looking at what their needs are and their obligation. And the legislature is going to work on assessment rate adjustments, assessed value adjustments. And finally, your assessors want to get it right. So if you think that your actual value is wrong, contact your assessor's office. If you think your classification is wrong, contact your assessor's office. If you just want to look at what is predicted as far as your taxes are concerned, talk to your neighbors. And then talk to your elected officials at those various taxing jurisdictions and see what relief they can offer. Thank you.
Sure. So I was wondering, somebody mentioned the increases in apartment property value increases. Do you expect tenants, renters in those apartment buildings to see high price increases in rent this year as a result of that?
Yeah, to be honest, I think that's a little hard for us to predict. I think the rental market, if you will, moves, excuse me, based on a number of factors. Property tax could be one of those, but we've seen some fairly historic type increases in multifamily in the past that haven't been met with immediate rent spikes. So rent. Those costs to an owner would certainly be part of their consideration in what rent they charge, but I would say they've got many considerations in terms of market rent that they can charge for their particular properties. I wouldn't say it's absent from the equation, but I'm not. I don't know you could predict a direct correlation. Sir.
Basically, you said a little bit earlier that there was a bit of good news out of this, and just to round everything up, do you think that this is a win across the board, or do you I just wanted to see what you guys felt, if this is, talking to residents and how they feel. Do you think that this is a positive thing for everyone, or do you think that this is a thing that, that it just shows the data and what's going on?
You mean in terms of property values going up? Is that kind of a feel-good kind of thing for everybody? I think that'll be a different kind of thought for everybody, just depending on where they're at. If I were a property owner that were considering selling my property soon, I think that, of course, increases in values are a good thing before you sell your property. But I say, generally speaking, it's better than the alternative, going through some kind of a recession where people are losing value in their homes and equity and things like that. So I know personally I'd rather see my property value go up than down. But yet at the same time, we realize very fully that property taxes are based on that. And we've talked about kind of how that manifests itself later in property tax bills and the equation, that's part of that. What we want to focus on, because the only thing we really have under our control is getting the value accurate. So I wouldn't say it's a bad news story, but I don't know if everybody would be totally thrilled about their property value going up either.
Exactly, for sure. Thank you.
And I was just wondering, as a renter, I hear this though, and I think I will never be able to buy a home in the city that I love. Can you speak at all to people who are renting and hear about this, and it feels like systemically this is benefiting a certain population versus another?
Yeah, would say as an assessor, that might be go a little bit beyond, but I can tell you I've got kids myself, and I hope they can someday buy a home and live in Colorado. I would expect that'll be a challenge for them should the housing market, housing prices that you've heard, where we're at now, stay at the levels that they're at. There's lots of different factors that go into that, median incomes, interest rates, a variety of different things that, kind of work in equilibrium with each other over time. I think it's been out there very publicly that Denver, Colorado, for that matter, is a very challenging place based on median incomes to own a median price property. That could possibly change over time. So I wouldn't say I'm distraught about it, even for my own children. I think I'm still optimistic. And I think it speaks to what a wonderful place Colorado is to live. People want to live here. And that's driving some of what you've heard today. Sir?
I'm sure you've seen there's been reports of people leaving Colorado, and basically just while people are still coming here, the numbers and the rates are actually going down. Do you think that the valuations going up has anything to do with that?
Boy, that'd be a little speculative on my part. I think people in-migrate or out-migrate for a number of different reasons. I think we saw that during, we're in this kind of post-COVID work world that we're in. There's lots of different factors, I think, that can influence people on where they want to live and where they want to move and why they want to do such things. So, housing prices might be a part of that, but my speculation is there's a number of factors that are driving migration either in or out of Colorado. Aldo, I saw you.
This is to involve all the assessors, and apologies if you've already discussed this, but how does this increase compare to your previous record increase? Could you give me some sense of scale, and roughly when was that old high? Or if not, do you have an average?
So
there's sort of an axiom like real estate should go up inflation plus 1 or 2.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll do a show of hands, but I can recall in 2019, 2017, 2015, talking about median increases that were largely in the 20s in Denver County. 2021 was an exception to that, COVID, all that kind of slowing. So for me, it was the previous decade of 2015, 2017, 2019, and even then it didn't reach the level that we're talking about today. I don't know if that's true of everybody at the table. Tables? Yeah.
Yeah, I want to get back to the last question, but to this one, Keith and I both started in the 90s, and in Douglas County, we had 30% increases in the 97 reappraisal, as well as the 1999 reappraisal. So that felt monumental at that time. What we're looking at this year is that's on the low end of our residential increases, at least in Douglas County, if not throughout the whole Front Range. So it's pretty dramatically higher than even that, which was pretty dramatic.
I'd be speculating in saying this, but I think if you took a poll of all 64 counties in Colorado, the vast majority of them would say this is the largest median increase that they've seen in recent memory, if ever.
This is home values, obviously, back from June 2022. You mentioned the word recession, not me. So if there is a recession, and obviously we know the home values have gone down since June 2022, if there is a recession, home values drop further, Coloradans aren't going to see any kind of reduction in their property tax bills until you guys reassess in 25, right?
That's correct. We anchor, and I'm glad you brought that up. June 30, 2022 is that's the point in time at which we look at what we're experiencing today, April 26, 2023. We're not even quite a year to June 30th, 2024, which is our next date of valuation, which will inform 2025. So a lot of things can happen between now and 14 or so months from now. When that time comes, we'll perform the same exercise we do every 2 years and probably have an announcement such as this about the results. But we can't consider anything in that time period. We call that post-base period activity. We can't consider that for purposes of what we're doing this year. It keeps us kind of all on the same playing field. It keeps us all at the same date of value so that we're not coming up with different values in different counties based on different dates.
Is that a statutory thing or is it constitutional?
It's
Statute.
statutory.
Okay, so the legislature could change that if it wanted.
They could.
They could. I thought I saw another. Did you want to say something
Yeah,
else?
if I could. I want to pour a little cold water on the notion that this is any kind of kumbaya moment. I happen to think this is very, very serious. Anecdotally, county assessors on a daily basis get to interact with small businesses, homeowners, renters, and the story that I hear every day is affordability is a crisis, and pricing in the real estate market is a very serious situation. And if you look at the past couple of years where we've seen pricing go up, interest rates go up, homeowners insurance skyrocket, and you look at what our mortgage payments are composed of, those four things, including taxes, now we are attacking the fourth aspect of the mortgage payment: principal, interest, insurance, and taxes. And if the state lawmakers don't act immediately on this, then it will be a crisis, in my opinion. So I love all the work that Joanne and her team do. They're fantastic. They're brilliant. But I would just disagree that this is a very serious situation, in my opinion.
I'm not sure that this is really appropriate for this particular press conference, but because the issue was brought up,
Can you go to the microphone, please?
Yeah, I can. Thank you. I'm so used to my outside voice that I forget it doesn't carry. But the question about affordability and whether or not a renter is ever going to be able to afford to buy a house, there are pieces of legislation that are going through, and there are programs that are going through to try and help mitigate that. One of those is House Bill 1184. It just had a hearing yesterday evening in the Senate Finance Committee. It's already gone through the House. It's a partnership with Habitat for Humanity and like places where they're trying to make changes for affordability. So I would say, don't lose your hope totally. It's just separate and apart from this particular effort.
So 2 years ago, we were talking about sort of the downturn in retail and lodging and office, I guess. How are those values? Are they rebounding? Are they flattening?
I'll give a general comment, and then anybody can correct me if they're wrong or if I'm wrong. 2 years ago, our data value was 3 months into COVID, and 3 months into COVID, retail, lodging in particular, maybe to a lesser degree, at least at that point in time, offices, there was a lot of uncertainty, I would say, at best, and anxiety around those commercial properties. I think by and large, we've seen lodging rebound quite a bit from where it was 2 years ago. Same thing with retail. Warehousing and industrial, I would say, has been kind of consistently strong even during the COVID period. Offices, I think, is kind of a mixed bag. I know for me personally, downtown is still a bit of uncertainty, and I think that's true of a lot of metro areas around the country at this point in time. So I think you get more of a mixture in the office sector, but I think generally speaking, commercial, retail, lodging, warehousing has performed pretty well in the last couple of years, but not to the level that we're talking about in terms of residential increases. I see nodding of heads.
And for those who are going to protest, I know there are all kinds of valuation models out there, Zillow, Realtor, but do you favor any or any more accurate? Or which?
We like our own, Aldo.
Yeah, I definitely do.
No, I think if someone wants to maybe consult a real estate professional, broker, appraiser that they know, someone like that, many property owners, are pretty familiar with the areas that they live, and they, might walk the dog and see listings around the neighborhood and are familiar with properties that have sold during that time period. And our websites have a tremendous amount of information on them. I know some websites you can even go pick your own comps and see how that works. So we'd invite people to look at comparables that they get or know of. We'd invite folks to look at or consider the condition of their property, and certainly review the characteristics that are with that. I think those are the three most important things that we would ask people to review when they get this notice, and consider whether or not they should appeal or protest. The fundamental problem with Zillow or any of those others, they're real time. And we're talking about a moment in time that was, June 30th of last year. So it just presents kind of a fundamental problem from the beginning, that we're talking about a different time period right from the start. Yeah, Bob.
Since you brought up Zillow and some of these other platform companies, I think it's interesting to note within the last 2 years, some of these companies were actually in the market purchasing real estate property here in this area. And at the same time, they're showing what your property value is, or could be, completely different how the assessor has to go about valuing the valuation date and the assessment date. So I think that's worth noting, that some of these companies have been active participant in the real estate market, yet trying to demonstrate a value. Was that the real market or not? I can't exactly say. Thanks.
Some of them have pulled back on Zillow offers.
Yeah. And we've thrown a lot of stuff at you guys. Any other questions? If there are no other questions, we sincerely thank you for coming. We think this is a pretty noteworthy time in assessment in the state of Colorado, and we're trying to get the word out to people, and we really thank you for helping us with that. So appreciate it. Thank you.